Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square, and welcome to First Draft, where I talk with journalists and authors about their important work and the stories behind them. I am very pleased to welcome Sari Botton. Sari Botton. Apologize for that. Everybody mispronounces my name too, so sorry about that. She has amassed a really interesting collection of work over the years. She has written the memoir And You May Find Yourself. She is the author of 2 best-selling anthologies, and she also publishes Oldster Magazine, Memoirland, and Adventures in Journalism. So a really broad array of topics. Today, we're going to focus a little more on Oldster and a lot of the topics that she covers there. But Sari, thank you for being here. I'm really interested to talk with you and about your really impressive career.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on, Susan. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, and I know that you are no stranger to our executive producer, Sam Osterhout. You both live in the same town. He describes you as expats from New York City, which I thought was fascinating. But can you talk with us a little bit about the inspiration behind your publication, Oldster Magazine?
Sure. Oldster Magazine comes out of my curiosity and anxiety about whether my experience of getting older is similar to or very different from other people's experiences of it. That's usually where my best work comes from. When I'm very curious about something or even anxious about it, I know that other people are thinking about the same thing. And getting older is a fraught experience, especially in a sort of youth obsessed culture. And so I followed my curiosity and launched this newsletter that, well, I call it a magazine, Oldster Magazine, that took off from the first day I started publishing it and continues to grow and really resonate with people of all ages.
Yeah, I know when a lot of people think about a magazine that would be devoted to aging, you automatically think about ARP and about that notice coming in your mail if you're approaching 50. But your approach seems really interesting to me because you publish perspectives from people who are much younger, like people in their 20s, and of course, people on up to their 90s. And so it's really a different approach to aging. And how did you kind of decide that that was the perspective you wanted to go with?
I've been, in addition to being a writer of personal essay and memoir, I've also been an editor of it. And I always love to collect a chorus of voices around a subject that is really meaty for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I did with my New York anthologies, Goodbye to All That, Writers on Loving and Leaving New York, and Never Can Say Goodbye, Writers on Their Unshakable Love for New York. I really am always curious about what everybody else's experience is. I also used to work for a nonprofit storytelling organization called TMI Project. I just really enjoy, and I think that's how people learn. Better than a self-help book, I love a memoir about someone's experience or a personal essay. I really learn and feel like I'm in community when I learn about other people's experiences, similar to mine, different from mine, and I know that other people really enjoy that. And I also wanted to include people of all ages for 2 reasons. One is that throughout life, there are big milestones, there are big years. It's not just when we get to be 60 or older or 50 or older. The 30s are really fraught for a lot of people, especially women. Your fertility is waning. I did a post once on the quarter life crisis, which talks about what happens between 25 and the early 30s. And, are you on the right career path? Have you found the right partner? There's all this pressure at different points throughout our lives. The other reason that I wanted to include people of various ages is that I like to foster intergenerational conversation along the way toward destigmatizing aging by showing that it's happening to everyone all along the timeline. So, I have a mission here, which is that I really want to normalize and destigmatize aging. And, you can't get 80-year-olds to care about what 40-year-olds are going through unless you share their stories. And likewise, the other way, you can't get 40-year-olds to really care about what's happening to people older unless everybody's got to be in on the conversation. And that's really working for me.
It seems to me, and please tell me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like you do take a particularly Gen X approach to aging. Maybe it's just the term oldster instead of hipster, but it also seems to me that Gen X is often left out of a lot of conversations. We're a much smaller generation than the ones that came before us and after us. Boomers seem to still dominate the conversation on everything. And millennials are a much bigger generation than us. And we even get left off of memes all the time, which maybe is for the best because there's a lot of intergenerational warfare. But I'm just kind of curious if that entered into your consciousness as you were crafting this publication, and what you are hearing from people who are Gen X about this journey as we age.
Well, I am squarely Gen X. I'm the oldest Gen X you can be, supposedly, demographically speaking. I was born in 1965, which is when that cohort begins. And, so naturally, I'm going to have this sort of Gen X irreverent sense of humor and take a word like oldster, which used to be an insult, and kind of turn it on its head. I mean, that's very Gen X of me. Also, as a Gen Xer, I'm kind of in the middle of my readership's age range. I've got lots of people at the higher end of the register and lots of people at the lower end. So I'm kind of like the moderator in the middle. And people really like it, no matter what their age is. They like the irreverence. They like the sense of humor. And the playfulness of that. But, Gen X is a really interesting age group, especially as we age, because we were the latchkey kids.
Right.
We were, we were the grunge kids. We were part of a really youth-oriented demographic, and now we're getting old. And so we're bumping into a contradiction. So it's a very interesting time to be Gen X. As we're reading every week, I read about a different icon from our generation who's turning 50, who's turning 60,
right.
Who is letting her hair go gray, who is eschewing plastic surgery, or maybe she's getting plastic surgery. Ricki Lake, when I interviewed her, talked on our interview about her deep plane facelift and neck lift. So it's an interesting time to be Gen X and to examine it, but I'm not limiting my scope at all to that.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating because when I think about aging, I think about my childhood and watching the Golden Girls, and now I'm reaching that point, and I look and I'm like, but I don't feel that different from when I was in college and going to 9 Inch Nails concerts, but I am. I have 2 kids in my 20s, and that's their life now, not mine. But also another part about being Gen X is it feels like we had to figure so much out on our own because we were the latchkey generation. Right. And there really is no one there to guide you about what it's like to age and to maybe be part of the sandwich generation where you're still raising kids, but your parents are getting older and you have to take care of them. And the fact that you came of age in a terrible economy, and we keep having terrible economies, and now we're trying to find some way to retire. And so it's nice to have a publication where there are just other people sharing their stories about what they're going through, because it does feel like a pretty isolating journey in some ways.
It does. I would argue that no generation was ever given any guidelines about anything. You know,
Fair.
every generation has to learn their own way, depending on what's going on in the world with policy and all kinds of things. But also, though, Gen X in particular, I think we are very confused about adulthood, and I think part of the reason we are, is because our parents started out as one kind of adults, and then they transformed into a different kind of adult
Mm,
during the sexual revolution. You know, I know that, like, all the parents around me and my parents, you know, in the 60s and early 70s, they were like the parents in the Dick and Jane books. You know, they were very formal. They had formal haircuts, formal clothes. And then, you know, in the mid 70s to late 70s, suddenly all hell broke loose. You know, the sexual revolution, the divorce boom, they all reverted to like an adolescence that they missed, or a young adulthood that they missed, because, you know, they got married at 19 and 20.
right.
You know, and suddenly they were like, you know, dressing in disco clothes. You know? And so we watched the rules change, and we were like, how do you be a grown up? What's the right way to be a grown up? We were very confused, and we were also, yes, we were, you know, feral. We were on our own, you know, feeding ourselves snacks after school, trying to do our homework while watching one TV show after another. You know, I remember sitting in front of the television watching, you know, I Dream of Jeannie, Gilligan's Island, Beat the Clock. You know, the TV was our babysitter after school.
Yeah. I try and tell my kids now what it was like to be on summer vacation as a kid, and how like your parents really didn't know where you were during the day. You just went out in the neighborhood, and it's kind of a miracle that a lot of us survived that. And it's
Totally.
also, you know, that we didn't have social media to help us screw up our lives when we were in high school doing dumb things. And it was very different. And it felt, at the time, it felt normal. But now when I see the way that a lot of us are raising our kids, we're like, well, I would never let you do that. That would be insane. And it's kind of
Crazy.
the same approach to life in general, where we're taking a look and we're like, okay, so my parents retired pretty close to the age I am now. How do I make that happen?
Oh, yeah. I started saving for retirement very late, like in my 50s. You know, I don't see retirement as like a real option for myself unless I win the lottery. And I do buy tickets. I live next door to a bodega that sells lottery tickets. Um, but I think a lot of us in our age group are in the same predicament. You know, and also, a lot of us have experienced the fields where we've worked have shrunken, and we've had a lot more precarity in terms of job security and financially.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations that I've had with people at every stage of my life where we're like, well, I'm not counting on Social Security because it won't be there for our generation. You know, the boomers are going to take it all. And now, when we're at the point where we're edging towards 67, uh, there are real concerns there, because this has not been something that the Trump administration has been talking about publicly, but we all know the plans that we've seen, that have been churned out by Republicans over, you know, decades, going after Medicare and Social Security has been one of the holy grails. And now, as many more people are approaching getting older, I mean, millennials are in their 40s, a lot of them now. Um, I know this is an issue that you've talked with an expert at the University of Wisconsin on. Talk to us about that and what we're all staring ahead at, because that's a really scary prospect.
Yeah, I've had a couple of interviews I've done with Callie Freitag, who is a policy expert at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's very bright, and it's funny. The first conversation we had, she was sort of saying, "Oh, not that much is going to change," and then we updated it at the 100 days mark in Trump's presidency because things were moving rapidly. We'll have another conversation hopefully soon, because it's a moving target. And, also a lot of our Social Security information was exposed through Doge. It's very scary. We're in uncharted territory, and I don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. But this is a presidency, this is an administration that is breaking all kinds of rules and norms. And so I feel like we really can't rely on at least the amounts that we thought we were going to get. And I'm very resentful because all my life, a big portion of the significant portion of my income has gone to Social Security. And I have relied on having it there when it's time. And so there's a lot of anxiety around it and no certainty.
Right. And of course, that's not the only area where we've seen some interest in from the right as far as going after the safety net. Concretely, Republicans in Congress did not decide to extend the ACA subsidies. And that has made a huge difference in the lives of every generation because healthcare was once far more affordable than it is now. And even with the subsidies, for some people, they were a godsend and it meant that they were paying nothing for their plan. But at least for other people, it made it so that healthcare wasn't astronomical. It was at least something you could fit into your budget. Now we're seeing, millions of people are going without health insurance. We're going backwards. And there really doesn't seem to be any discussion at all about solving that problem right now. That is this something that you're hearing from your readers are really top of mind as people are experiencing like double-digit premium increases?
Yes, there have been some comments when I've posted about that, about changes. People are anxious. People are spending way too much money on health insurance, and not, and you don't get much for it.
Right.
Where I was hit with an increase this year. I have an ACA plan, um, and I'm paying a lot of money, and I have a $4,700 deductible.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Everything but my annual checkup and my woman care checkup is out of pocket toward
Right.
that 4,700. That's crazy.
Right.
That's, and I know people who are paying double. People are paying, twice what they were paying. And people are anxious about it, especially as they're getting older and having more healthcare concerns, more things that
Right.
they need to tend to, hip replacements. I'm looking at a potential hip replacement soon. And I'm going to have to pay first $4,700 out of pocket for it before my insurance pays a portion of it. It's very concerning. And now the costs of everything else are going up too. Gas is hitting $4 a gallon. Heating oil is going up. It's food costs. It's just people are being hit from all angles. And when you're older and you have additional things that you need to cover, it's especially concerning because a lot of older people are on fixed incomes as it is. If they're retired, there's no room for extra costs. It's very, very concerning, and I don't know that we can rely on this administration to address these things in a way that will help people afford their lives better.
Right. And it's kind of ironic that at the beginning of the year, we were talking a lot about these, huge healthcare inflationary prices. And now that seems to be drowned out by the fact that gas is up $1 more a gallon since Trump decided to invade Iran. We know that food prices won't be far behind because of rising prices with fertilizer, but those healthcare costs haven't, gone down in the meantime. So the affordability crisis is probably one issue that can bring generations together, because we're all getting hit, whether you're on a fixed income and you're retired, or you are in your working years or at the beginning of your career. I mean, this is hitting everyone.
It really is. And at least where I live, I'm seeing lots of mutual aid groups,
Mm.
supporting one another. People are posting, hey, I got hit with a heating oil bill that I can't pay and I could lose my home. Or, people are helping each other out, which is wonderful. But there's a social network that we've all been putting in, toward that should be there for us. And it's not.
Yeah.
Or it's not to the level that it was, and it's concerning.
Right. And I know that you have talked with a lot of people who have been forming different activist groups, specifically people who are older, like Seniors Taking Action, We the Seniors. Can you talk with us about what they're doing out there and what was inspiring to you about that work?
Yeah, I also want to mention Third Act, a New Yorker writer, Bill McKibben's action group, which is wonderful. Yeah, these groups are activating seniors. They're getting people to vote, and also to help get the vote out, to write postcards, to canvass, to attend marches like No Kings and
Mm.
others. They're really wonderful. They're making it very easy for seniors to engage politically. Um, Bill McKibben's group is for people 60 and over, thirdact.org. And then Mary Mulvihill, a wonderful woman in Manhattan who I interviewed, she has been involved in two groups, We the Seniors and Seniors Taking Action. And it's really great to see older people helping other older people get involved. It's an age group that was very involved in the 60s and beyond, and they're vital and they're vocal. And more than 70% of people over 65 voted in the last presidential election. It's a very active group. So it's really good to see those groups being active again, and standing up and activating their cohort, their peers.
And so I went to all three No Kings in different parts of the country, and also the Ice Out for Good protest back in January. And consistently, whether I was in Michigan or California or Las Vegas, the theme was that I would say definitely the majority of people who showed up were over 40. And I don't know if that's your experience in some of the rallies that you've attended, but I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about why it is, people who are older who are showing up in greater numbers for these anti-Trump protests.
I don't know where I am. I'm seeing people of all ages
Okay.
here in Kingston, New York. It's a very progressive community here, and so I'm seeing people of all ages really
Great.
getting showing up, standing up. Um, and I think older people in particular, I mean, they started they started this in the 60s, and they're not going to stop, especially now that they see things reversing from the progress that they helped make. They're seeing it reverse, and they often speak about this in the Oldster questionnaire. I have a lot of people saying, I can't believe what I'm seeing, and I'm standing up, to speak out against that. I don't want progress reversed.
Mm.
I can't really speak to Gen Z or young millennials, but I do see them out where I am, and I
Mhm.
also see them getting involved in grassroots organizations, at least where I am in the Mid Hudson Valley in New York.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there is a lot of enthusiasm, especially for a lot of the younger and more progressive candidates that are running this cycle. So I definitely see that. I'm curious on your take because we do live in a meme culture and everything is online. I don't really see this so much in person, but there is a lot of like that intergenerational warfare rhetoric online. Everyone over a certain age is gets the okay boomer, and obviously people who are older can be very dismissive of Gen Z, and it
Totally.
goes both ways. How do we bridge those divides, especially, when I think there are a lot of shared values. I think it's pretty easy for a lot of us to agree that we really don't like the direction that Trump is taking this country. But there are certain issues that we're all interested in, and there's a lot of pressure on everyone, especially with the economy. So how do we get past that so that we can have the broadest base movement that we can?
I am trying to bridge those gaps, um, and that's why Oldster is intergenerational. But it is hard, and I do see those posts on social media. I know that millennials and down are resentful that boomers and older Gen X aren't stepping out of the way. They're
Mhm.
retiring later, holding on to their jobs longer, which makes less room for younger generations to move in. And I'm sympathetic to it. Although I'm also, in my mid 50s, after I left one job and assumed I'd be able to get another, I couldn't, which is why I started Oldster. Um, so I understand some of the frustration. Also, I think some of the younger progressives are frustrated with centrists and older people who are less progressive. There is some real tension there,
Yeah.
and I don't know exactly how we're going to bridge that. Every time things get worse, I think, oh, well, we'll all come together and we'll solve this because this is bad. And the only way is for us all together. I don't know the answer other than for us to understand each other, to get to know each other. And that's what I'm trying to do with Oldster.
That's great. And I mean, let's be honest, it is a distressing truth out there that Gen X broadly is the Trumpiest generation, which is and obviously if you break down it by gender and by race and by economic class, that falls apart a little bit. But just as a cohort, that's been hard for me to get my arms around because I always kind of viewed us as part of the counterculture, and we were the ones who came of age during a really crappy economy for the most part, and it was the time where like Bill Clinton was saying, "Don't worry, you can just sell stuff on eBay and you can get by with your minimum wage job," and we're like, "Great, thanks, appreciate it." And so to see that to some degree, I feel like we've turned our backs on some of those struggles and become some of what we used to deride our parents' generation for, who would vote for Reagan. It's hard to see.
It is really hard to see. I think some of it comes from people living in bubbles. I know I do. I know that most of the people in my life share my values. I don't really know a lot of Trump voters, uh, but I also understand that there's been a lot of disillusionment. There's been a lot of disillusionment with things we were promised. People we, valued are on the Epstein list.
Yeah.
There, a lot of us were disillusioned by the Clintons and a lot of the choices they made. And I'm not going to go and vote for Trump as a response to that, but I guess there are people who would. I also think that a lot of it is tribal.
Mm,
I think that a lot of people are influenced by their families and families that always voted Republican. I've also seen some friends of mine who were the only liberals in their family grow up and turn to their family's politics. And
Mm.
that has been really, really, really hard to witness.
Yeah. Yeah, I have definitely noticed the same thing. And, one thing that I've tried to explain, like to my kids and their friends, is that we lost a lot of battles. I mean, and I think there's definitely a real possibility that we will never see a Gen X president. We'll just skip right on to millennials and Gen Z. And hey, maybe it's for the best. I'm not going to say. I mean, I saw Paul Ryan kind of was held up as the Gen X politician, and I would certainly let's go to the millennials. We don't need Paul Ryan, but time and time again, we kept being told, wait our turn. Eventually you'll make enough money that you can, pay more than your rent. And a lot of those promises were broken. And whereas I know that there is a section of Gen X that were like, well, we want something better. We don't want our kids to experience this. That you can understand to some degree. People are like, well, it's never worked out for us. And so maybe you just can't trust anything. And that kind of apathy, I feel like Trump has taken advantage of.
Completely. But then he made a bunch of promises that he has not kept.
Right.
And I'm hoping that disillusionment helps us in the coming elections, midterms, and the next presidential election, assuming we're allowed to vote, which I'd like to assume.
we all would. Well, Sari, tell us a little bit more about what are some of the issues that you're looking to cover coming up, and are there other ways that you're trying to organize before these midterm elections?
I definitely will. I might collaborate with some of the groups that we mentioned to help get the vote out in various ways, postcarding campaigns and things like that. I'm always dealing with different issues as they come up, as they're in the news. I write a weekly letter from the editor in which I speak my mind about things that are going on that week in the world. So I always touch on those things a little bit, but I will be getting involved as we approach the midterms and beyond in whatever ways I can, because I really want to use my platform to try and move the needle if possible.
That's great. And do you get approached by a lot of writers from like different generations who are interested in contributing?
Oh, definitely. You have no idea how many emails I get every week. People asking if they can take the Oldster questionnaire, which is a Wednesday feature, or if they can write a personal essay for me. Really established, wonderful writers. I'm so honored that these people want to do this. It's really, really wonderful. Yeah, I feel very fortunate that, I'm an established editor. I was an editor at a website called Long Reads for 5 years.
Right.
I've published these best-selling anthologies. So, writers know me, I know writers. And so I have these relationships that I'm very fortunate to have. My agent and I are in the process of shopping an Oldster anthology, and writers keep saying, oh, please, me, include me. And it's wonderful. It's a good position to be in.
That's great. Sari, can you tell us the best way that people can find Oldster and the rest of your work?
Yes. So they can find me at oldstermagazine.com or oldster.substack.com. And they can also check out my website, saribotton.com. It's pronounced like Larry Cotton, SARIBOTTON.com, and oldster.substack.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Sari. I really appreciate your time.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.